Welcome, dear traveler, to Whispers of Warcraft. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the crackling hearth of Stormwind Keep and the quiet murmur of ancient oaths carry you across the tapestry of a king's life. This is the story of Varian Wrynn, the Lion of Stormwind, who was born into peace, forged by war, scarred by tragedy, and transformed by love. Close your eyes. Let each word slow your breath. Together, we shall follow his footsteps from boyhood laughter to the roar that saved a world. In the decades before the orcs' arrival, Stormwind was the crown jewel of the south. Its marble walls gleamed like polished pearl under the sun. Canals reflected banners of deep blue and shining gold. The Cathedral of Light's bells tolled across Elwyn Forest, calling knights and peasants alike to worship. In markets, bakers sold honeyed bread beside florists weaving garlands of white lilies. Children chased each other across stone bridges, their laughter echoing under stone arches. Stormwind was a place of hope, a city rising from the oldest line of Arathorian kings. King Lion Wrynn, crowned young after his father's death, ruled with kindness and a strength beyond his years. His court respected him not for the sharpness of his blade, but for the warmth of his words. Queen Varian Wrynn came from a noble house known for compassion. She gave audiences to peasants who traveled for days seeking help. She held orphans close when they lost parents to bandits in Redridge or sickness in Westfall. On a morning of soft rain, when the sun pierced clouds like spears of silver, Tiffin gave birth in a quiet chamber of Stormwind Keep. Midwives hushed each other as the baby's first cry rose. Outside, the cathedral's bells began to ring, signaling the birth of a prince. King Lion entered, his boots soaked from sprinting across the keep's halls. His face lit up as he took the swaddled boy in his arms. He traced the boy's dark hair with a calloused thumb. "My son," he murmured, voice hoarse with emotion. "May the light guide you. May you always stand for your people." He named him Varian, a word from Old Arathorian meaning unyielding. Varian's early childhood was filled with warmth and joy. Every morning, Tiffin carried him through the royal gardens, dew still fresh on emerald leaves. She showed him lilies from Stranglethorn, roses from Gilneas, and tiny flame flowers brought by traders from far-off Tanaris. He giggled as butterflies landed on his chubby fingers. He squealed with delight when royal mastiffs came to lick his cheeks. As he learned to walk, Varian toddled through practice yards where knights sparred in gleaming armor. He imitated them, brandishing sticks twice his size, eyes flashing with fierce determination that made hardened soldiers exchange proud smiles. King Lion loved to lift Varian onto his shoulders. Together, they watched knights joust in the castle's training fields or saw children perform dances in the city squares. "Remember, my son," Lion would say, voice deep and gentle. "The heart of a king is not in his sword, but in the love he bears his people." At night, Tiffin tucked Varian into a bed of embroidered silk blankets. She sang lullabies passed down from her grandmother, melodies that spoke of rivers in Elwyn and starlit nights over Redridge. Her voice calmed Varian's restless energy until his eyelids drooped. Some evenings, Lion joined them by the fireplace. The king would tell stories of human kings from Arathor, of the hero Thoradin who united warring tribes, or of the battles long forgotten. Varian would cling to every word, eyes wide as the flames flickered and shadows danced. Even as a young prince, Varian's heart reached beyond the keep. He played with stable boys, sharing candied apples stolen from kitchen pantries. He learned to ride a pony named Brightmane, his laughter echoing as he trotted around the practice fields, watched by knights who were fiercely protective of the small boy. He visited Goldshire with his mother, marveling at the bright stalls, and once gave his favorite wooden lion to a child who had none. The peasants spoke fondly of their little prince, who smiled at everyone and feared nothing. When storms rolled in from the sea, Varian would stand by a window, face pressed against cold glass, staring at the lightning splitting the skies. He asked his father if kings feared thunder. Lane shook his head with a chuckle. "We all fear, Varian," he answered softly, kneeling to meet his son's eyes. "What makes a king is standing firm, even when your heart shakes." Varian took those words deep into his soul. As Varian neared his 7th year, word spread through Stormwind's taverns and markets of strange creatures sighted near the southern swamps. Green-skinned giants with eyes like burning coals. Knights returned from patrols with tales of villages razed, of entire families vanished overnight. At first, King Lane tried to shield Varian from these rumors, but late at night, the boy heard hushed arguments outside his chamber. Lane's voice, tight with worry, Tiffin's, trembling with fear. One humid dawn, Varian climbed the keep's tallest tower to find dark clouds swirling over the horizon. Green lightning forked across the sky. From the black morass, the first orc warbands spilled into Azeroth, clad in spiked armor, axes gleaming with dark oil. Knights scrambled from barracks. Horns blared in the city. Varian watched lines of armored soldiers march through Stormwind's gates. Even the bravest among them glanced back at the keep, fear in their eyes. The clangor of steel soon drifted back from Elwyn Forest. Black smoke rose beyond the tree line. Varian's nursemaid rushed him inside as refugees poured through Stormwind's gates, farmers, shepherds, children with soot-streaked faces. In the great hall, King Lane laid maps upon a long table, his voice low and urgent as generals argued over defenses. Varian, hidden behind a marble pillar, clutched a wooden lion, heart pounding at the desperation in his father's voice. That night, as the city braced for siege, King Lane sat by Varian's bed. He took his son's small hand and held it against his heart. Outside, the distant roar of battle rose like thunder. "Remember, my lion," Lane whispered, tears glinting in his eyes. "Even in the darkest night, you carry the light, and it will always find you." The following week, the orcs advanced to the city's outer walls. Drums boomed in the night, shaking window panes. Torches ringed the horizon like a storm of angry stars. Varian stood beside his mother at a balcony, eyes wide as catapults hurled flaming boulders beyond the walls. Columns of smoke twisted into the sky as farms outside Stormwind burned. Months passed under siege. Food grew scarce. Children grew thin. Mothers wept in alleyways. Varian watched his father ride out each dawn with knights, returning at dusk with fewer soldiers than before. Yet each night, King Lane knelt with Tiffin and Varian by their hearth, offering prayers to the light. Even as walls cracked from constant bombardment, they clung to the hope that Stormwind could yet endure. On a day heavy with thunder, King Lane called Varian to the throne room. He hugged his son tight, rough beard scratching Varian's cheek. "I am proud of you," he murmured. As they parted, a hush fell across the room. Garona Helforsen, trusted half-orc emissary, stepped from the shadows. Her eyes glistened with regret even as her blade flashed. Steel pierced King Lane's chest. Varian screamed as his father fell. Guards surged forward too late. Corona fled into the night. Orcish warbands, emboldened by Lane's death, stormed Stormwind's outer defenses. Flames rose from every district. The skies filled with ash. Knights died one by one, buying precious minutes for citizens to flee. In the keep, Anduin Lothar, King Lane's closest friend, seized Varian's hand. "We must go," he barked. "Now." Tiffin pressed a kiss to Varian's forehead, tears streaming down her face. "Remember who you are," she choked. Guards dragged her away as Lothar lifted Varian into his arms and ran. They fled through secret tunnels beneath the keep. Sounds of the Orcish horde echoed above. Roars of victory, the crash of walls crumbling. Varian buried his face in Lothar's cloak, sobbing as every footstep carried him further from the only home he'd ever known. When they emerged at the harbor, Stormwind burned behind them like a second sun. Flames swallowed the white walls. Smoke choked the dawn. Knights, peasants, and scattered survivors boarded ships in the misty harbor, sails snapping in strong winds. As they pulled away, Varian stood at the prow, face streaked with soot and tears, eyes locked on the burning city shrinking in the distance. He gripped the wooden lion his father had carved for him. "I swear," he whispered to the blackened sky, voice raw, "I will return." The ships from Stormwind arrived battered and smoke-streaked at the northern shores of Lord Aeron. Peasants and knights stumbled down gangplanks onto cold docks, their eyes haunted. The royal procession moved quietly up the city's wide avenues, dwarfed by Lord Aeron's soaring marble arches. King Tyrannus Menethil greeted the refugees with open arms, his gray beard bristling with solemnity. "You are welcome here," he told Lothar, his voice deep and kind. "Stormwind's fall is a loss to all humanity." Varian, small and lost in the towering halls, clutched Lothar's hand. The court of Lord Aeron bustled with nobles, scholars, and paladins of the Silver Hand, but to Varian it felt cold. Each meal in grand halls reminded him of empty chairs where his parents should have sat. He missed the familiar warmth of Stormwind's gardens, the smell of fresh bread in the keep's kitchens, the sound of his mother's voice. He often slipped away from his caretakers, wandering the castle's echoing corridors. Guards would find him asleep in the chapel, his wooden lion tucked under his chin. In the palace's training yards, Varian first met Prince Arthas Menethil. Arthas was younger, with shining blonde hair and a grin that could light up a room. The two boys began sparring with wooden swords under Anduin Lothar's watchful gaze. At first, Varian's rage made him fierce. He fought with wild swings. Arthas, though less skilled, was patient. Soon they were laughing together, rolling in the grass, the weight of kingdoms forgotten for a few fleeting hours. Varian studied swordsmanship under knights who had fought trolls and ogres in Lord Aeron's wild places. He learned courtly manners from Lady Katrana Prestor, though even as a boy, something about her cold, measuring eyes unsettled him. He read the histories of Arathor and the fall of the old human kingdoms. He memorized the oaths of the Silver Hand and recited them in bed until sleep claimed him. In the evenings, he trained beside Arthas in the stables, their laughter echoing over the crunch of hay beneath their boots. One winter morning, messengers arrived bearing grim news. The orcs had not stopped with Stormwind. The horde ravaged Cosmodan's mountains, slaughtered dwarves in the snows, and pressed northward. King Tyrannus summoned kings and envoys from every human realm. The great hall of Lordaeron filled with banners of Stromgarde, Ulterac, Kultiras, Gilneas, and Dalaran. Voices rose in anger and fear as old rivalries flared. But Lothar stepped forward, his voice a roar that silenced the hall. "We must stand as one, or we will fall one by one." In the end, the kings clasped hands, each swearing to send soldiers, supplies, and ships to drive the orcs back. Thus was born the Alliance of Lordaeron, the greatest union of human, dwarven, and elven strength Azeroth had ever seen. Varian watched from a balcony, heart pounding, as knights of a dozen kingdoms pledged to avenge his fallen home. Stormwind's refugees joined the Alliance armies. Dwarven smiths forged new weapons in Iron Forge's blazing forges. Elven rangers from Quel'Thalas arrived in cloaks of emerald and silver, their arrows flying farther than any man's. Varian trained daily in the snow-swept courtyards of Lordaeron's Keep, his breath steaming in the cold. He sparred with knights who once guarded his father, determined to prove himself worthy of Stormwind's lost glory. Despite the harsh winter and long days of training, Varian found comfort in Arthas's friendship. They snuck into kitchens to steal fresh bread, chased each other across frozen courtyards, and dreamed of adventures beyond the palace walls. In those moments, the burden of kingship slipped away. They were only boys, two friends against the dark. Each night, Varian knelt at his window staring south. He imagined Stormwind's white towers restored, its streets filled with music. He whispered to his father's memory, vowing again, "I will return. I will make our kingdom whole." Sometimes he dreamed of the Keep aflame, of shadows with green eyes, and awoke screaming. But Lothar was always there, sitting in the dark, whispering words of comfort until dawn. As spring thawed Lordaeron's snow, the Alliance armies gathered. Long columns of knights, elven archers, dwarven riflemen, and human footmen marched south to meet the horde's advance. Drums thundered from dawn to dusk as battalions crossed forests and mountains, armor clanking, banners snapping in chill winds. Varian, now a tall youth, rode beside Anduin Lothar at the head of Stormwind's contingent. The first clashes came in the Hillsbrad foothills. Frost-covered meadows ran red with blood as orcish grunts slammed into human lines with brute force. Trolls loosed volleys of poisoned arrows from snowy ridges. Varian fought beside veterans of Stormwind, his sword steady, even as fear clawed at his chest. He parried a troll's curved blade, the clash ringing in the frosty air, then drove his sword into the creature's chest. His hands trembled afterward, but Lothar's nod of approval steadied him. The horde pushed into Cosmodan, threatening the dwarven halls. Alliance forces met them on frozen lakes and rocky passes. Griffins swooped from the skies, hurling orcs into icy waters. Dwarves hurled explosive kegs that shook the earth. Varian fought beside Magni Bronzebeard's warriors, learned dwarven tactics. Each night, he listened to tales of the Titans and the forging of the world, stories older than any human kingdom. Near Quel'Thalas, high elves in emerald cloaks joined the war. Their arrows fell like silver rain, cutting down waves of orcs. Spellbreakers shimmered with arcane shields, turning aside axes and dark magic. Varian marveled at their grace and power. An elven ranger, Illyria Windrunner, taught him to shoot a longbow, her voice soft but fierce. Aim with your heart. Let fear guide your caution, not your decisions. The final battles raged at Blackrock Spire. a fortress of molten stone where Orgrim Doomhammer rallied the Horde's last stand. Catapults hurled flaming boulders. Blizzards conjured by elven magi snuffed out orc fires. The air stank of ash and blood. Varian charged alongside Lothar, their swords flashing like twin comets. Lightning crackled overhead as mages unleashed their fury. Shouts of "For Stormwind!" rang across the battlefield, echoing off black cliffs. In the fortress's shadow, Anduin Lothar confronted Orgrim Doomhammer. The two champions circled each other, blades drawn. Every clash of steel rang like thunder. The armies paused, holding their breath as titans battled. At last, Doomhammer's hammer found its mark, crushing Lothar's helm. The Lion of Azeroth fell. Varian screamed, the sound lost in the roar of battle. He knelt beside Lothar's lifeless body, the knight's eyes glassy beneath his cracked helm. For a moment, despair threatened the alliance. But Turalyon, Lothar's loyal lieutenant, raised the knight's broken sword, his voice booming, "For Lothar! For the alliance!" A wave of fury swept the soldiers. They crashed into the Horde's lines, pushing them back with renewed strength. Orcish war drums faltered. Doomhammer himself fell captive, and the Horde's forces scattered. With the Second War won, Varian sailed south with the Alliance Navy. As their ships approached the shores of Elwyn Forest, white gulls circled overhead. The air smelled of pine and spring rain, but Stormwind lay in ruin. Walls cracked, towers toppled, streets choked with weeds. The city was silent, but for the wind whispering through empty archways. Varian dismounted in the shadow of the keep's broken gates. His boots crunched over charred cobblestones. He laid a hand upon a scorched wall, closing his eyes. Memories of his father's laughter, his mother's songs, and nights by the hearth flooded his heart. He dropped to one knee in the courtyard, head bowed. "I have come home," he whispered to the ashes. Knights, masons, and refugees gathered around him. Varian rose, voice ringing across the square. "This city will rise again. We will build it stronger, fairer, and more beautiful than ever before." The people cheered. Hope, long dormant, sparked to life once more. Years passed as Stormwind's walls rose anew. Stones of white granite were hauled from the quarries of Westfall. Stonemasons carved statues of heroes fallen in the war. Builders raised new towers to the skies. The Cathedral of Light's bells rang again for the first time since the city's fall, their echoes carrying across Elwyn Forest. When the final spires gleamed, knights gathered in Stormwind Keep's great hall. Blue and gold banners hung from arching pillars. Nobles and commoners alike filled every pew. The High Lord of the Silver Hand placed the crown upon Varian's brow. "Arise, Varian Wrynn," the High Lord intoned, "King of Stormwind, defender of the Alliance." Thunderous cheers shook the keep. Church bells rang across Stormwind's canals. Tears of joy flowed freely. In the weeks that followed, Varian walked among masons and merchants. He thanked them for their sacrifices, asked about their families, and listened to their stories. Bakers offered him warm bread. Children ran to greet him, their eyes wide with awe. He sat beside blacksmiths at open forges, watching them hammer blades for the kingdom's new guard. He joined farmers for supper in Goldshire, lifting a tankard to toast their labor. Wherever he went, hearts warmed. "The lion walks among us," people whispered. During an audience in the keep's gardens, Varian met Lady Tiffin Ilarion. She came as part of a delegation from noble houses who had funded the city's rebuilding. She was kind, quick-witted, and unafraid to speak her mind. even to the king. They strolled through rows of white roses blooming in the spring sun, sharing stories of childhood. Tiffin made Varian laugh more deeply than he had in years. He found himself drawn to her courage and grace. Over months, they spent hours walking the city walls at twilight, watching lanterns shimmer on the canals. They rode together through Elwyn's forests, stopping to picnic by lakeside meadows. They spoke of dreams, of a world where no child feared war, of a kingdom where every voice was heard. One night, as the moon crowned Stormwind's towers in silver light, Varian took Tiffin's hands. "You are the heart this kingdom needs," he whispered, "and the heart I need." Their wedding was the grandest celebration since the city's rebirth. Trumpets blared from the keep's highest battlements. Every bell in the Cathedral of Light rang as priests blessed the union before thousands gathered in Cathedral Square. Dwarves arrived with barrels of Ironforge's finest ale. Elves sent garlands of silver leaf and moonflowers. Griffins circled the skies in honor of the royal couple. As Varian lifted Tiffin's veil, cheers rose from rooftops to rivers. They kissed, sealing a union of love and hope that swept away the last shadows of Stormwind's darkest days. With Tiffin at his side, Varian oversaw a golden age. Grain stores filled. Roads were rebuilt from Redridge to Westfall. Trade flourished with Ironforge and Darnassus. The Stonemasons' Guild grew strong, building libraries, hospitals, and statues honoring those who fell in the wars. Tiffin held councils with healers and teachers. She opened orphanages and led feasts for the poor. Together, they walked Stormwind's streets, greeting peasants and nobles alike. Under their reign, the city shone brighter than ever. On a snowy evening, when frost painted the keep's windows with stars of ice, Tiffin gave birth to a son. His first cry rang through Stormwind Keep, echoing like a herald of new hope. Varian wept openly as he took his newborn son into his arms. He named him Anduin in honor of Anduin Lothar, the knight who had protected him as a boy. Priests blessed the child. Nobles and peasants alike cheered in the streets. Candles burned in every window of Stormwind, their light dancing through the night. Varian found a new purpose in fatherhood. He bathed Anduin, rocked him to sleep, and told him stories of brave knights and clever kings. He and Tiffin spent quiet evenings by the hearth, watching their son sleep. Each dawn, Varian trained with knights until sweat soaked his tunic, then carried Anduin through the gardens, pointing out robins flitting among budding branches. He dreamed of a world his son could inherit without fear. As Stormwind grew prosperous, some who had rebuilt it felt abandoned. The Stonemasons' Guild, who had poured their lives into raising the city's walls and towers, expected fair pay. But with coffers drained by war and reconstruction, the kingdom fell short. Whispers of resentment rose in smoky taverns. Stonemasons who once sang songs of pride now cursed the royal family. Guild leader Edwin Van Cleef began gathering the discontented, promising justice for their labor and sacrifice. Graffiti appeared on walls overnight. "We built these walls. Now we starve behind them." Merchants found notes slipped under their doors, warning of unrest. Rumors spread of weapons stockpiled in hidden cellars. Knights arrested agitators, but every dawn more seditious pamphlets littered the markets. Some noble houses scoffed, but Tiffin visited the guild halls herself, pleading for patience. Her words calmed many, but Van Cleef's anger only grew. One summer afternoon, the stonemasons gathered in Cathedral Square, for what began as a peaceful protest. Tiffin insisted on joining Varian, determined to show she cared. "If they see their queen, they'll know we hear them," she said softly. Varian hesitated, worry clouding his eyes, but he could never deny her resolve. The square filled with shouting voices. Demands turned to insults. Stones flew, shattering shop windows. Guards pushed back. A single spark, a thrown bottle of lamp oil, ignited a cart, flames licking the sky. Panic erupted. Tiffin stood with knights around her, reaching out to calm the crowd. In the chaos, a hurled rock arced over the guards. It struck her temple with a sickening crack. She crumpled into Varian's arms, blood pooled across her pale cheek. Her eyes fluttered open one last time, finding Varian's face. "Take care of him," she whispered, breath shallow. Then her gaze went still. Varian let out a roar that silenced the square. He cradled Tiffin, her golden hair dark with blood. His knights closed around him as rioters fled in terror. The flames cast long shadows across the cathedral's white stone. Thunder rolled in the distance as storm clouds gathered above Stormwind. Word of the Queen's death spread like wildfire. Cathedral bells tolled in slow, mournful cadence. Citizens wept openly in the streets. Merchants shuttered shops. Even children sensed the world had changed. A procession of knights bore Tiffin's body to the royal crypt, streets lined with thousands holding candles. Elun's priests and the cathedral's clergy chanted prayers in the moonlit silence. In the royal nursery, Anduin, still a toddler, called for his mother. Varian knelt beside his son's cradle, tears falling onto the soft blankets. He sang the lullabies Tiffin once hummed, voice ragged with grief. Each night, he wandered the halls of the keep, her absence a wound that never healed. Servants avoided his eyes, fearing the fury simmering behind them. Varian blamed the stonemasons' guild for Tiffin's death. He ordered Van Cleef and his allies outlawed. Knights razed guild halls, scattering members into the wilds of Westfall. Van Cleef fled into hiding, vowing vengeance. From dark hideouts, he sowed seeds of rebellion, plotting what would become the Defias Brotherhood. Varian withdrew from Stormwind's joys. He trained obsessively, dueling 3 nights at once until sweat and blood stained the practice yard. His patience with courtiers vanished. His decrees grew harsh, uncompromising. Though he loved Anduin fiercely, the boy's every smile reminded him of Tiffin, deepening the ache in his heart. He held his son close each night, vowing he would never let harm come to him. Though Stormwind recovered outwardly, darkness crept quietly within. Nobles whispered of strange black-robed visitors slipping through alleys. Some knights claimed they saw Varian pacing his chambers at dawn, his eyes distant, as if haunted. Onyxia, still hidden in the guise of Lady Katrana Prestor, tightened her coils around the court. She fed Varian counsel dripping with half-truths, isolating him from allies. Anduin watched his father grow colder, more distracted, but his words could not pierce Varian's fog. One spring morning, Varian boarded a ship for Theramore to meet Jaina Proudmoore. Anduin hugged him tightly at the docks, unaware it would be their last embrace for years. As the royal galley cut through the waves, black clouds gathered. A sudden storm roared to life with unnatural fury. Waves rose as tall as towers, slamming the deck. Lightning flashed, revealing shadowy figures leaping aboard, robed sorcerers of the Black Dragonflight. Knights drew steel but were cut down by dark magic. Varian fought savagely, sword singing in the storm, but a final spell wrapped him in shadows. He vanished into darkness as the storm calmed. The shattered galley drifted back to Stormwind, sails in tatters. Survivors told of the king's disappearance. Panic swept the city. Nobles argued. Knights searched every coast. Onyxia stepped forward, her voice calm and sweet. She guided the council to crown a regent until Varian returned. Few realized they were placing the kingdom in her claws. Meanwhile, Varian awoke in a damp, stinking cell, wrists bound by chains etched with dark runes. Each day, he was dragged to an arena beneath jagged cliffs. Roaring crowds of ogres, trolls, and goblins demanded blood. His captors gave him a new name, Logosh, the Ghost Wolf, for his unyielding ferocity. In a pit stained dark with old blood, he faced beasts with fangs longer than swords, ogres swinging spiked clubs, even other enslaved gladiators desperate to survive. Each night, Varian tended his wounds alone. He sharpened blades pilfered from fallen foes, using the sound of steel scraping stone to drown out memories of Tiffin's death and Anduin's tearful face. He made allies among the other gladiators, a druid from Gilneas who whispered prayers to the wild gods, a Tauren who had lost his tribe. Together, they plotted escape, sharing food and watching the guards' patterns. Far away, in Stormwind, a second Varian appeared. Through dark sorcery, Onyxia had split Varian's mind and form. One half, weakened and malleable, she returned to Stormwind. He ruled as a pale shadow of the lion, confused, uncertain, easily swayed. The other half, Varian's fury, his resolve, his warrior's heart, remained Logosh, fighting to survive. The Varian who returned to Stormwind was not the king his people remembered. His eyes lacked the fire of old. His decisions grew erratic. Taxes rose. Westfall and Redridge suffered as Onyxia sowed chaos. Bandit attacks increased. Nobles who questioned Katrana Prestor vanished. Anduin watched helplessly, convinced something was horribly wrong. In the pits, Logosh's fame grew. Spectators shouted his name. Coins rained upon the sands when he claimed victory after victory. He became a symbol of defiance even among his captors. Between battles, he gathered scraps of information about where he was, hints that led him to believe he might be in Dustwallow Marsh. Late one night, a night elf warden slipped into his cell. She had heard rumors of the Ghost Wolf. Her eyes widened as she recognized him. "Your people need you, King Varian," she whispered, keys in hand. A full moon shone as Varian and his newfound allies broke their chains. They fought through guards, blades flashing silver in torchlight. Roars of wounded ogres rang in the night as the group stole away into the marsh, mist curling around them like ghosts. At dawn, they reached a hidden cove where a small boat waited. Varian looked back at the fortress he had escaped, its towers silhouetted in pale light. "Stormwind," he murmured, gripping his sword. "I'm coming home." Varian and his allies fled across the mist-choked swamps of Dustwallow Marsh. Giant spiders scuttled among twisted trees. The cries of marsh beasts echoed like ghosts. Mists parted just long enough to reveal black drakes circling above. Each night, they camped under twisted boughs, their fires hidden beneath rocks. Varian sharpened his blade by moonlight, eyes hard with resolve. Memories of Anduin's laughter and Tiffin's gentle songs drove him forward. Word of Logosh's survival spread. Jaina Proudmoore, powerful mage of Theramore, appeared one evening in a shimmer of arcane light. Her eyes widened as she beheld Varian's fierce gaze. "Varian," she whispered, tears welling. "Stormwind thought you dead." He gripped her hand, voice ragged. we have no time for grief. Stormwind must be freed. Jaina vowed to help, summoning supplies and loyal agents. At her side, Varian planned his return. They sailed north on a swift cutter. Onyxia's minions, black-scaled drakes, descended upon them in squalls of fell lightning. Jaina conjured shields of shimmering frost. Varian's sword flashed, slashing wings from a drake that crashed into storm-tossed waves. Through nights of lightning and tempests, they pressed on, each gust of wind carrying them closer to home. In Stormwind, the weakened Varian still ruled in confusion, guided by Onyxia's whispers. His council met in secret, torn between faith in their king and the clear signs of something terribly wrong. Anduin prayed each night in the Cathedral of Light, asking the light to bring his father home. Dreams of a fierce lion prowling stormy seas filled his sleep. Varian reached the gates of Stormwind under a moonless sky. Loyalists slipped him inside. He strode through secret tunnels beneath the canals, heart hammering with every step. At dawn, he entered the royal chambers, where the weakened Varian stood face pale, eyes haunted. Sparks of recognition flared as the two Varians stared at one another. Light and shadow swirled, memories flooded between them. Love, loss, rage, hope. Their two halves merged in a burst of golden light, and Varian stood whole again, stronger, wiser, more complete than he had ever been. Katrana Prestor appeared behind them, her disguise slipping. Scales glistened as her voice twisted into a guttural snarl. "You should have stayed lost," Onyxia hissed, wings unfurling, horns splitting her noble visage. She smashed through marble walls, tail-whipping columns into rubble. Flames erupted from her maw, roaring down hallways. Knights, mages, and priests rallied to Varian. They fought Onyxia's dragonkin in the keep's shattered halls. Steel clashed with claws, arcane bolts flared in the gloom. Varian leapt upon Onyxia's back as she spread her wings, driving Charlemagne deep between black scales. She roared in fury, smashing him against pillars, but he rose again and again, blood streaming from wounds. Onyxia tried to flee to her lair. Varian would not relent. He pursued her through secret tunnels beneath Stormwind, his knights at his heels. They fought through chambers of molten rock, dragon eggs pulsing with fell light. Finally, in a cavern deep below the city, Varian confronted her alone. Anduin's face flashed in his mind as he raised his blade. With a final roar, he drove Charlemagne into Onyxia's heart. Her death cry shook the earth. Her colossal body collapsed, flames flickering out. At sunrise, Varian emerged from the catacombs. Knights and citizens waited anxiously in Cathedral Square. When they saw him stride forth, bloodied but standing tall, a great cheer rose. Bells rang in peals of joy. Tears streamed down faces both noble and humble. Varian lifted Charlemagne high. "Stormwind is free," he declared, voice ringing with the fury and hope of a true king. With Onyxia dead, Stormwind knew peace again. Varian restored the city's markets, rebuilt the burned Park District, and replaced statues toppled in the dragon's rampage. Each morning, he walked the streets, speaking with blacksmiths, bakers, and children who marveled at the return of their fierce but compassionate king. He held councils with Anduin by his side, teaching him the subtleties of diplomacy and the burdens of justice. Each night, they dined together in the keep, laughter slowly returning to their halls. Word spread of the Lich King's return in Northrend. A black dread settled over Azeroth. Plagues of undeath swept through villages, turning entire towns into horrors. Varian stood before his council, voice like iron. This darkness will not reach Stormwind. He rallied the Alliance, ordering ships built to sail north. He called for unity among humans, dwarves, gnomes, night elves, and Draenei. In the cathedral, priests blessed every soldier before departure. In the frozen wastes of Northrend, Varian led his knights across icy plains where the wind howled like wolves. He faced Nerubian horrors in underground labyrinths and fought atop glaciers cracking beneath his boots. At the Wrath Gate, he saw Horde and Alliance alike fall to the traitor Putris Plague. His fury threatened to break him, but Anduin's letters from Stormwind reminded him of mercy. In Dalaran's floating spires, Varian met with Jaina Proudmoore, High Lord Tyrion Fordring, and champions of every race. They forged a fragile truce with the Horde to bring down the Lich King. In the shimmering halls of the Violet Citadel, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Horde warlords, his eyes wary but resolute. For Azeroth, he declared, not just the Alliance. Varian watched from below as champions stormed Ice-Crown Citadel. News of Arthas's fall reached him at dawn, carried by silver griffins. He bowed his head, mourning the boy he once called friend, praying the world might know peace at last. But shadows stirred even in victory. When Deathwing erupted from Deepholm, the world itself broke. Stormwind's harbor shattered, the park district reduced to flaming ruins. Varian led rescue efforts, pulling citizens from rubble with his own hands. He ordered new defenses built, working alongside masons through sleepless nights. Anduin helped organize healers and refugees, their bond stronger than ever. Varian called a summit of all Alliance leaders, the Council of Three Hammers, Prophet Velen, Tyrande Whisperwind, Gen Greymane. Together, they formed the Council of the Alliance, pledging unity beyond old rivalries. In the throne room, Varian stood before them. Divided, we are prey. Together, we are the shield of Azeroth. The leaders clasped hands. The modern alliance was born. In quiet evenings, Varian trained Anduin in the Keep's gardens. They debated war and peace as fireflies drifted in the warm air. Anduin's gentleness softened Varian's old wounds. Varian's strength gave Anduin courage. Varian learned to let go of rage, seeing hope in his son's eyes. He began to believe in a world where peace could one day last. When the mists parted over Pandaria, Varian sailed south with the Alliance fleet. Jade forests unfolded along distant shores, mountains wreathed in drifting clouds. But the beauty hid ancient wars and new conflicts. The Alliance and Horde clashed across Pandaria's steppes, each vying for artifacts of terrible power. Varian, mindful of his son's pleas for peace, sought alliances with the Pandaren, hoping their wisdom might end the cycle of hate. At the foot of Kunlai Summit, Varian and Anduin knelt in the Temple of the White Tiger. Statues of jade tigers loomed above, eyes cold as glaciers. Varian placed his hand upon his son's shoulder, voice low. You will inherit this world, see its beauty, and swear to protect it. Anduin looked up, determination shining. I swear, Father. When Garrosh Hellscream's madness threatened to tear Azeroth apart, Varian led the Alliance to Orgrimmar's gates. Horde rebels, led by Vol'jin, rose alongside him. Thunder rumbled as catapults launched fiery boulders. Towers crumbled under the combined assault. Varian stormed Orgrimmar's tunnels, cutting down Kor'kron loyalists. The roar of battle echoed through blood-stained halls. When Garrosh fell, Varian stood over him, blade poised, but Anduin's voice called him back from vengeance. He lowered his sword. Let him face judgment, Varian said, eyes locked with Vol'jin. A fragile peace was forged that day. In the aftermath, Varian met Vol'jin amid the ruins of Orgrimmar. They spoke not as enemies, but as fathers hoping for better tomorrows. Perhaps one day, Varian said, we will see our children meet in peace. Vol'jin's tusks dipped in solemn agreement. The moment planted a seed of hope that outlived them both. Back in Stormwind, Varian watched Anduin grow into a man of compassion and strength. Together, they planned aid for Westfall and Redridge, rebuilding homes, restoring faith in the Alliance's promise. On quiet nights, they dined together in the keep's highest tower, where moonlight silvered the rooftops. They spoke of kingship, justice, and the price of peace. But peace was not to last. From beyond the stars, the burning legion returned in fury. Fell storms blackened the skies, demons poured through shattered portals. Azeroth's heroes gathered once more. Varian led the Alliance fleet to the Broken Isles. His warship's sails billowed with lion banners as thunder rolled across storm-tossed seas. On the shores of Suramar, Varian's knights faced Felguards and Infernals that towered like siege towers. Arrows fell like rain. Stormwind's banners whipped in burning winds. Varian stood at the front, Charlemagne gleaming with holy light. He roared into the storm, "For Azeroth!" His blade cut through demons like a silver comet. The order to retreat came too late. Horde ships pulled back, unable to hold the line. Varian chose to stay behind, buying time for his people's escape. He led his knights in a desperate rearguard, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder against a sea of fel. Gul'dan's laughter rolled across the cliffs. On the deck of a battered airship, Varian's face appeared in Anduin's scrying mirror. Blood dripped from his brow, but his eyes were steady. "My son," he said softly, voice breaking through the roar of battle, "you must be stronger than me. Lead them. Protect them." Tears streamed down Anduin's face as his father smiled one last time. Gul'dan summoned a monstrous fell reaver, claws raking the sky. Varian leapt, Charlemagne flashing as it cut deep. The demon reeled, and Gul'dan struck. A blast of fell fire engulfed Varian. His final roar echoed across the sea. Light burst from his blade as he fell, his sacrifice saving the fleet, his people, his son. As dawn broke over the broken shore, fell storms retreated. Wind carried only the sighs of waves and the sobs of survivors. The Lion of Stormwind was gone. When news of Varian's fall reached Stormwind, the bells tolled in long, low peals. Black banners hung from the keep's highest spires. The city fell silent as thousands gathered in Cathedral Square, candles flickering in the dawn. Knights in black armbands stood in solemn ranks. Peasants and nobles alike wept openly. The roar of the lion had gone silent. In the royal courtyard, Anduin stepped forward, the golden crown of Stormwind heavy in his hands. His voice trembled, but resolve glowed in his eyes. "I will not let my father's sacrifice be in vain," he declared to the gathered masses. "I swear to protect Stormwind, to lead the Alliance, and to seek a peace worthy of his memory." The crowd bowed as one, whispers of "for the king" rising like a prayer. In the Cathedral of Light, Varian's shattered armor lay upon a marble bier surrounded by lilies and candles. Priests chanted ancient hymns. Warriors placed their swords upon the floor in tribute. Elven rangers from Darnassus, dwarven thanes from Ironforge, and Draenei prophets all came to pay respects. Even emissaries of the Horde sent words of mourning, for in Varian they had known a fierce, but honorable foe. From Westfall to Stranglethorn, tales spread of the king who stood unbroken through every storm. Children grew up hearing stories of Varian's courage, his triumphs, and his unyielding love for his people. Statues of the Lion of Stormwind rose from Lordaeron's fields to the jungles of Pandaria. In Stormwind Harbor, a towering monument faced the sea, a lion with its mane billowing, sword in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. Anduin took up his father's blade, Charlemagne, its edges gleaming with light. He traveled across Azeroth, forging alliances, healing old wounds and leading armies when he must. Though gentler than Varian, he carried his father's strength within him. Each dawn, he prayed in the cathedral, whispering, "Guide me, Father." Even in death, Varian's spirit endured in every shield raised in defense of the innocent, in every act of kindness that bound Azeroth's peoples together. His roar echoed in the hearts of those who refused to bow to darkness. Tonight, dear traveler, you have walked the road of Varian Wrynn. From a child's laughter in Stormwind's gardens to the roar of the lion on the broken shore. May his story remind you that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to stand in the face of it. That love is the greatest shield, that hope can outlast even the longest night. Thank you for joining Whispers of Warcraft, where legends are told softly, and every shadow has a story. Rest now, sleep deeply, and know that you too carry the heart of a lion. Good night, and sleep well.